Good evening. This is Cross and Crown Radio and the Gospel Truth Podcast. I'm Mike Robinson, your host. We got an interesting show. We're going to be talking about what possible supplements, including vitamins, minerals, and herbs, as well as food products, that might be protective, perhaps could prevent or help with viruses, including the cold virus, flu virus, and the COVID-19, is also known as a coronavirus. So we're going to be talking about that tonight, as well as some other aspects of what's happening because of the coronavirus spiritually and what you can do. And so this will be an interesting show for you. And this will be uploaded on our YouTube channel, Cross and Crown Radio. We appreciate if you can go over there and subscribe. That helps a lot over there at Cross and Crown Radio on YouTube. But before we start with the important nutritional aspects of what we can do, if you think you're getting the virus or you want to prevent the virus, someone in your household has it, or someone sneezed on you or whatever, we'll get into that with herbs, vitamins, supplements. I'm a certified nutritionist. I've been practicing for about 30 years, and I really enjoy it. I keep up with all the journals and so forth. So the Bible says to cast all your anxiety upon Jesus, for he cares for you. That's 1 Peter 5:7. Very important scripture. The Bible also says in Isaiah chapter 41, so do not fear, for I'm with you. Do not be dismayed, for I'm your God, and I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous hand. That's good news. So whatever happens to you, understand God is with you if you're a Christian in the covenant community. Philippians 4:6-7 says, therefore do not worry. It says, do not be anxious. It's a similar word to worry. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, notice that every situation, that would include this one, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, present your request to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, including all the medical community with this virus situation going on, transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your mind in Christ Jesus. And then Jesus says this, like no one else can do, as Creator, God, Savior, and Lord, and your best friend. He says, therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and your body more than clothes? Jesus says, do not worry. God's going to take care of all of it. And so the verse that I'd really like most of our listeners to memorize would be 1 Peter 5:7, which we mentioned earlier, to cast all your cares or your anxiety or your worry upon Jesus, for he cares for you. Now, as a certified nutritionist, let me talk about herbs, vitamins, food, teas, minerals, and other such things that you might want to take to prevent getting the symptoms of COVID-19. Perhaps if you get the virus within you, helping to eliminate it faster from your body, and other such things that has medical science behind it. Now, before I start, make sure you talk to your doctor or your health professional or your own certified nutritionist about this before you start on all these things. Now, some things may get so crazy and you might not have time to think about what to do, like even ordering elderberry, which we're going to talk about later, and some other supplements on the internet. They're dissipating really fast. They're flying off the shelves. And so there's not much left in some of the places. Amazon does have all these nutrients I'm going to mention tonight, as of tonight. And so this is March 18th. As of tonight, it's on the shelves on Amazon. Whether it will be tomorrow, I'm not sure, especially as myself and other nutritionists talks about this. Now, what's interesting, about a week ago and maybe a little bit back, you would see a lot of videos on this particular virus being a hoax or being overblown and such. And when you look on YouTube, you can see a lot of that. And you can even put that in the YouTube search box, coronavirus, hoax, or overblown, and look that up. I didn't do it today, but I did it yesterday. And yesterday there were no videos that came up that were not a week or older. So most people who thought it perhaps could be a hoax, why would people think that? Because of all the things that have been thrown at the Trump administration that were false. So it would be part of the playbook, which would be logical. But it doesn't seem like that's the case with this. Although overblown still may be a possibility, but that's for the protection of our elderly folks and those that have respiratory illnesses and other illnesses that affect their immune system. So overblown in that case, perhaps. We'll talk about that also a little later. Now, younger people, a lot of them do not exhibit any symptoms at all, and they can have the virus. So if you have a teenage daughter or son, or you have friends that are 20-something and they don't have the virus, they could still be spreading it to you and to your loved ones. So be careful with your elderly and those who have immune problems and other medical frailties. Make sure you protect them from anybody. The way to do it is to assume, especially younger folks, that everybody has a virus. Now, depending on what state you're in, whether it's New York or California or some other state, whatever state you're in might depend on the odds of everybody having the virus, or at least thinking that everybody could possibly have the virus. The odds are lower in other places, but it's very protective to yourself and your family if you just assume that, in the sense of, I'm going to stay 6 feet or further away from folks. If they touch something, I'm going to touch something. I'm going to know I have to wash my hands or wash that surface that they touched, and so forth. So keep that in mind. You younger folks especially, make sure that you keep all these safeguards in mind if you want to see your grandmother or your great-grandparents or somebody that's a senior citizen in your life. Protect them by not necessarily seeing them physically at this time, perhaps having a room separating you or other such measures. You have to do that on your own. But let's get into the virus, and then we'll get into the supplements that you should take to ward off this particular virus. Possibilities. We don't know. There hasn't been any research on it, obviously, because it is the novel virus, and it comes from animals. And so the animals transfer this to humans, and this COVID-19, this coronavirus, because we have no immunity to it, it seems to be much more dangerous than the flu. Even though the flu takes out tens of thousands of Americans every year, 20,000 or more Americans die basically of the flu every single year. This seems to be, at least at the start, possibly more dangerous. In fact, the health professionals assume and presuppose it's much more dangerous than the flu because of how easy it spreads and how many people it does eventually kill versus the flu percentage-wise. Now, it's very, very contagious, and it can be very dangerous. It came from China in one of the wet markets, from somebody probably eating bat, having something to do with bat. And so part of what President Trump should possibly consider is not having any flights to China and from China until they shut down the wet markets. The travel restrictions, the travel ban that he has on China should probably stand until China gets rid of all those wet markets. Wet markets are where they have all these exotic animals, and they sell them for potential medical condition cures or elixirs or other such things. So people buy bats and eat them, or certain exotic snakes or exotic cats and different types of animals that they shouldn't be consuming. The Bible warns of consuming some of these animals, including bats in Leviticus. Don't eat bats. So we've seen this with the swine flu, with SARS, coming into the world through these wet markets, including this COVID-19 virus. So it's very, very contagious. It came from animals, goes from animals to people. In less than a month, it mutated and was able to jump from human to human. So this virus can move very, very fast, as you see in Italy, and you follow the stats going on there, as well as Spain. And it can cause great, great damage to lungs. People get a severe case of pneumonia sometimes with a particular strain of this virus. So you want to protect yourself from it. But in my particular family, in my household, we might lean into it in a sense. What do you mean by that? That sounds kind of dangerous. Well, I don't want to catch it. I don't want anyone in my household to catch it. But a couple members of my household are they're submitting to some measures that the government talks about, but others they can't submit to because they're too much of a person-to-person type of people. So there's other issues that I want to talk about, but they're not. So I'm assuming that they're going to go out there and bring the virus in. So what am I going to do to protect myself? I'm going to probably, well, I shouldn't say probably, but there's a chance that I will get the virus, maybe a higher chance than most people, because one of the folks that lives in my household, a loved one, of course, works in a particular public place where they see dozens and dozens and dozens of customers every day. And that particular place, as of today, is not closing down inside. And he works there. So that with some other things going on. But the point is, for people under 70 and 80, generally, you're just going to get the flu-like virus, or flu-like symptoms, I should say. It's a different virus than the flu. But the symptoms, for most people that are under 70 and 80, they're just flu-like. Sometimes they're even more mild than that. Especially the younger you are, the more mild they are. So it's nothing to really fret about in that sense. It's something to fret about that you could spread it to a senior or somebody who's got a compromised immune system and they can die. So in that way. Plus, who wants to get a flu-like condition anyways, right? You don't want to be miserable. So that's one reason we're going to talk about vitamins and herbs and foodstuffs as teas that can help you perhaps, possibly, avoid getting a full-blown case of the COVID-19. The thing to do most of all, if you can, is stay home, wash your hands, keep your social distance, the thing that all the medical professionals are saying. Now, you might have a household like I do, where one or two members are going to be out there in the public constantly. If that's the case, then you really, really should take heed to what I'm going to talk about tonight. If you're, especially if you're getting in your 40s, 50s, and 60s, and 70s, you might want to take heed of what I'm going to talk about. The first one I mentioned is vitamin D. Vitamin D. Our bodies don't normally make vitamin D unless we're exposed to sunshine. So if you live in a sunny area like I do here in Texas, you generally get enough vitamin D. But you might also want to supplement, because having higher blood levels of vitamin D, but up to a point, that's why you need to see a certified nutritionist. Up to a point, it really, really helps your immune system. But when you go over, it doesn't. So your blood levels of your vitamin D are important. What we do in my house is we take 400 IUs to 1,000 IUs 2 or 3 times a week. We don't take it every day. Okay? During this particular outbreak, for the first 2 weeks, we'll probably take it every day. But then after that, again, you don't want to have too much vitamin D for other reasons. But you want the full effect that you can get from vitamin D. That's still available on Amazon. I'd get a really good company like Puritan Pride, Twin Lab. I don't get any money from any of these companies. I don't work for any of these companies. These are just companies I've utilized for over 30 years. Or Swanson, Nature's Way, Nature's Plus. Those companies, Solgar, Country Life. Those are companies I can vouch for. Some of them I've actually been in their factories and seen their operations. I've talked to many of their people that work for these companies, and I've utilized their products for about 30 years. So, vitamin D, I'll mention those companies again. Solgar, Nature's Way, Country Life, Nature's Plus, Puritan's Pride, and Swanson, among others. Vitamin D. It will help a lot with this possible virus. See, vitamin D plays a role in regulating your immune system. We don't know exactly how it does it, but it could help limit the effect of the virus on you if you're exposed to it, or if you actually contract this particular virus, COVID-19. So take some vitamin D, even if you live in a sunny area. I would recommend that 2 or 3 times a week, but talk to your medical professional or your certified nutritionist yourself. Why do I say that? Because you don't want to self-medicate if possible. Because there's so many factors that are involved. What medications you're taking, what your age group is, what other vitamins and herbs you're taking, what type of food you eat, your weight, your gender, your background, your medical background. All these things come into play, and you need to understand that you can't self-medicate. So talk to somebody about some of these vitamins, supplements, and herbs as a professional before you start. Garlic. Powerful. And here's one reason why you should talk to you even about garlic. It's a natural substance, but if you take it in a sense of being a supplement, whether it's in a capsule or you take a lot of the herb and you crush it up and eat it raw, but you do a lot of that, garlic thins the blood. You say, well, that's generally a good thing. Well, yeah, generally it is. But then what if you're taking fish oils and aspirin and turmeric and other things that also thin your blood? See, all these things have to be known and have to be understood before you implement taking certain supplements, herbs, and vitamins. So green tea is another one that's an antiviral. Garlic is known to be strongly antiviral as well as antibacterial. Very, very good to have. Green tea, black tea, very antiviral. Drinking those throughout the day, 2 or 3 times a day, important. Now, here's another thing. They both have caffeine. If you have high blood pressure, or you have other problems with your heart, or other issues, you need to know before you start drinking a lot of green tea. Okay, it's very important. Olive leaf, also very strong antiviral substance. Now remember, in ancient times, they did not have the pharmaceutical companies we have now. And yet, wise people sometimes would understand the history of the herbs. It would be passed down to another person, and they would understand the potent compounds that are within the particular herb that would help certain ailments, illnesses, or infirmities that you might have. And so the herbalist would recommend taking this or that. And so these things can be very, very powerful, can be very, very helpful with viruses. But don't self-medicate if possible. What I call the nuke option when it comes to catching a flu or a cold or perhaps this COVID-19, if I feel like I have a strong virus, I'll generally take selenium, and I'll get in that a little bit, and that's important to understand what selenium's about because it could be dangerous. It's not, just know that. Selenium, yeah, you can buy it in a vitamin store, but taking too much of it can be a poison. But the protocols I generally take, vitamin D, selenium, garlic, beta-glucans, elderberry, astragalus, and then olive leaf sometimes I supplement within there. And if it's not being effective, my nuke option is oregano caps, oregano oil. Oregano is a very popular herb. It's actually part of the mint family, believe it or not. But this I've seen really, really be effective for the flu and cold virus. We don't know what it'll do with COVID-19, the coronavirus. We assume and hope that it works as effective on that virus as it does cold and flu viruses. In test tube studies, oregano oil reduced the activity of MNV virus within 15 minutes of its exposure. So that particular virus is very contagious and a primary cause of the stomach flu. When you get that, whoa, man, and you feel horrible and you have to vomit and so forth. This has helped stop it in the laboratory as well as in clinical conditions. Oregano oil also has been shown to exhibit antiviral effects against herpes simplex virus type 1. Also, the virus that causes cold, the seasonal cold, has been very effective on that, as well as viruses that cause diarrhea in infants and children. Oregano oil. I use it as a last result, or if something's really gotten a hold of me, right? Go with that. If not, I keep my protocol of vitamin D, selenium, also I forgot zinc lozenges, and olive leaf, possibly elderberry, and astragalus. I'm going to talk about all of those separately as we go through here and show you how that protocol works. See, I have my, and I'll open this up in a little bit, I have my cold and flu box that just has, remember I'm a certified nutritionist, I have all of my supplements I have ready if anybody in the household catches a cold or the flu, as well as during this time with this COVID-19. Echinacea, a lot of people recommend echinacea. There's been so much research that has demonstrated that echinacea probably doesn't work. A lot of herbalists try to refute that, so I right now don't necessarily recommend echinacea. Selenium, like I said, is part of my protocols with the flu or cold, and with this virus, I'm going to try it also. I'm hopeful it works. Selenium comes in 200 micrograms as the strongest dose because it can be a poison. So you got to be careful with it. You don't want to take it more than a week or 10 days at a time if you're taking 1 to 5 tablets a day. Normally you want to take 1, 2 or 3 times a week, okay? and that should be enough selenium, which helps with your immune system. This potentially helps prevent certain cancers in your body. But when it comes to viruses, it's very, very antiviral. And it's been very, very effective with colds and flus within my own life, as well as others I've recommended it to or given it to. So the first conditions and symptoms of a cold or flu that come upon me, or this potential COVID-19, I will take 2 or 3 selenium right away, and I'll do that every 2 or 3 hours, but only for a few days. And then I'm very careful. I'm a certified nutritionist. I keep an eye on what's happening with my vitamin D, with my zinc lozenge, with my elderberries capsules, with my possible olive leaf, and I hold off the oregano oil unless I absolutely need it. Zinc lozenges are also important, okay? Now, I know some of you can't afford, and the beta-glutens, can't afford all this stuff. I understand that. And I'll talk about the protocols. If you can't afford hardly anything, what can you do? Raw garlic is really, really good, and it's cheap, and it's at the store as of yesterday. I didn't check today with Kroger if garlic is in the produce section, but it probably will fly off the shelf really soon, and it might not be available much in the coming weeks or months because it is so effective. But if you can't afford anything, get the garlic, get vitamin D. Vitamin D is very inexpensive. If you get Puritan Pride, good company, but inexpensive. Puritan Pride's 400 IUs of vitamin D. Selenium's fairly inexpensive. You can get that. Beta-glucan tends to be a little bit pricey, somewhere between $12 and $20 a bottle, depending on the size and the amount, the strength. But very, very important. Beta-glucan I really, really love. Zinc lozenges I really, really love, especially early on catching the cold or the flu or this possible COVID-19 coronavirus. Comes on, you suck that. Another thing why you want to talk to professionals is when you take a zinc lozenge, it's going to ruin your taste buds for a while. Okay, so you want to possibly do it after you eat, or you're going to ruin the taste of your meal. You won't be able to enjoy your meal at all. So with zinc lozenge, be real careful when you take it if possible. Beta-glucan, the way I found out about this as a certified nutritionist, before I saw this in the literature, a guy came up to me. This is about almost 25 years ago. I was working as a nutritionist in a vitamin store. This guy comes up to me in the lab coat, and I think he bought some elderberry, which was just on the starting understanding how great elderberry was for colds and flus. But he came in for some elderberry, and then he told me, you know what? I work at the lab down the street here, and we work with some infectious diseases. He says, everybody in the lab takes this. Boom, he puts it on my counter and says, I'll give you this for free. And it was beta-glutens. Our store didn't carry it. It wasn't really much around in those days. I had not heard of it. So I investigated before I took it, of course, and found out that it's really, really powerful. And so beta-glucans can tend to wipe away the virus or the bacteria. It really enhances your immune system in a very powerful way. So you want to do that also. I'll repeat all this and sum it up at the end, but I'm going to give a little bit of exhibition on what each of these herbs do, and then I'll try to sum it all up at the end. Licorice root. Not the candy necessarily you buy in the store. Some of the candy has a little bit of licorice, most of it has none. Okay? There are some companies on the shelf that have real licorice, and look on the ingredients, see where it's at in the list of ingredients. If it's the last ingredient, probably doesn't have enough in it. Okay? But I really, eat the candy a little bit, but you can get the capsules. Licorice capsules. Great for the lungs. If a virus is coming upon you that's really filling your lungs, seek a medical professional first. But if they're telling you it's not a big deal, try licorice root with whatever protocols are given you. Talk to your doctor first. Very effective. Contains a substance that reduces the growth of viruses and halts their ability to penetrate and reproduce healthy cells. So it's a very effective treatment against viral illnesses, including HIV and viral hepatitis, which is really interesting. Now, olive leaf, I mentioned earlier, is not part of my basic protocol when it comes to the flu or the cold or a possible COVID-19, but it has something with an linoleic acid in it, which is identified as a very powerful inhibitor of viruses in laboratory tests, including the flu, herpes, and even polio. Certain enzyme reactions occur when it's induced or introduced into your body that help block those viruses from growing. So very important if you're getting sick, but see your doctor first, especially if you have any symptoms of COVID-19. Make sure you see your doctor first. Get tested, see what you have, and then listen to your doctor. Most of this is to help prevent getting the virus. Once you get the virus, I would not try to do just supplements. I would talk to your doctor. Now, many people get the flu, and many people die of the flu in the United States every year. Mostly senior citizens or those with compromised immune systems. Another antiviral substance you can take is St. John's wort. Well, I heard that's for depression. Well, yeah, it does help with depression, but it's strongly antiviral. It's also good when it comes to pain. If you don't want to take opioids and other strong pain medications, try St. John's wort. It's normally been used over the centuries for depression, but it's also very effective with pain, and it also is a very strong antiviral. We talked about garlic earlier. Garlic has been shown to be effective against the flu, against HIV, against HSV virus, against viral pneumonia, and also rhinoviruses, which are generally your common colds, in test tubes as well as in some clinical studies. Peppermint is also a strong antiviral substance. What you could do is add that to your elderberry tea. Make some elderberry tea. I would consider drinking elderberry tea every day, 2 or 3 times a day, mixed with green tea and peppermint as a very strong elixir that's antiviral and possibly might help prevent you from catching a strong case of the COVID-19. Again, if you get diagnosed with the COVID-19, if you have symptoms, make sure you get tested. See your doctor and do what he or she says first. Rosemary also has shown to be an herb that has strong antiviral activity against herpes, against HIV, against the flu, against hepatitis in animal, as well as test tube studies. Elderberry is my favorite, though. Elderberry, the research started in Israel on elderberry and how effective it is against the flu and the common cold. Elderberry, just a berry, but you can get in capsules. The best company I've seen over the years is Solaray, but you can't find it on Amazon anymore. Solaray elderberry, you can find it mixed with echinacea, like I said. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that one unless you have to. There's other companies on Amazon. I looked through those companies. None of them look too strong except for Nature's Way. They have a black elderberry capsule that looks pretty good. I've never taken Nature's Way black elderberry before, but it looks good because Nature's Way is a company with a fine reputation. I've taken numerous of their products over the years. Very effective, very strong company, very honest company. They have a black elderberry on Amazon as of today. Okay, you can get Solaray elderberry, just straight elderberry, the whole herb, on the internet through other herbal companies. Some of them are charging an arm and a leg right now, trying to make money off of it. So be careful on that. Beta-glucans, the one company that I've used for years is Now, N-O-W company. Their beta-glucans are reasonable and they're very strong. Okay, so all the other companies I listed earlier, you can get their products with beta-glucans if you want to. Astragalus is also a very strong herb that helps enhance your immune system and has other qualities that seem to be antiviral, including antiviral effectiveness against hepatitis C, avian flu, and herpes. So that's a really strong one. And ginseng is also really, really good. Ginseng could be added to that elixir I talked about earlier. Korean ginseng, a lot of research has shown that it's very effective when it comes to protecting your lungs. White tea is also very, very good for your lungs, as well as white grape juice. White grape juice and white tea. So a great elixir in a tea form would be white tea, green tea mixed elderberry tea or elderberry liquid, ginseng, and you have that all mixed together, and you drink that 2 or 3 or 4 cups a day to try to prevent catching the COVID-19. It would also, if your doctor approves, help you if you do come down with it. I hope you don't. And so when you think about what you shouldn't take, there's also some things that have been demonstrated to lower your immune response. And unfortunately, that would be Motrin, Tylenol, and ibuprofen. Those tend to interfere with certain aspects of your immune system when you're possibly being exposed to a virus. So a lot of you take that for pain medication or headaches and such. If somebody's near you that's had the virus, the COVID-19, or you think you might have been exposed, or you're around a young person quite a bit, or somebody who's worked in a daycare center or in the public arena where they're within dozens and dozens of people every day, you have to assume that probably some of those dozens and dozens and dozens of people have the virus. Maybe they don't, depending on the state you're in, but perhaps they do. And so be really, really careful with taking those pain medications, Motrin, Tylenol, and ibuprofen. Talk to your doctor again about that. Your doctor will tend not to know much about herbs. They probably won't tend to know much about your immune system and how these medications affect your immune system. You can bring them literature, talk to them about it, whether it's adding herbs or vitamins or supplements to what protocols they tell you. If you have the information, you can show them. Maybe they'll be able to give you their professional opinion on it, but make sure you talk to a professional. So when we think about this particular virus, there's things that are kind of worrisome. One of the things in the Wall Street Journal today is this article. It says, generation gap widens as cases spread. And the article is talking about in the Wall Street Journal how in the United States and in Europe, a lot of the young people that would be 30 and under, especially 25 and under, are not taking this seriously. One reason they don't take it seriously, the article says, is because they're young and they're probably not going to get it. If they do get it, it won't affect them much. So there's that aspect. Too bad for you. It's not going to, do much to me. Also, like all of us when we were that age, we tend not to be as cautious and concerned about our own health as well as the health of others as we will as we get older. So that particular generation could be potentially very dangerous. Again, each individual is different, but if you're a senior or you know a senior or you're living with a senior citizen or somebody with a compromised immune system, be very, very careful with a young person that's in your life or in their life. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life, but just assume that young person, even though they may not, assume that they have the virus. If they hug your grandmother and such, that could be a very tragic hug. So be careful. So that's one thing. Another thing that a lot of people don't know about, Wall Street Journal, again, just so you know it's not me. I know you can't read that. But a second wave of cases grips Taiwan, Hong Kong, and other places that seem to have a grip on this COVID-19. So it seems, if this is accurate and this ends up manifesting the way the article says, where they put in really tight restrictions and they contained the virus, and then now it's popping back up in a fast way again, possibly. If that article is right, then there could be different waves of this that occur. So we have to be careful there. What would I have done if I could possibly do it as a leader of the world? If possible, and I don't know if this would have been, it would be to keep the senior citizens and the medical community. Again, this would be hard to do. I'm not saying it's possible. I think Denmark's trying to do this to some level. Keep the senior citizens, the medical community, and those that are medically frail contained and quarantine away from everybody else and kind of let everybody else just get the virus. Why? Because almost everybody else is not going to die, and most of them are not going to get sick enough to go to the hospital. Now, the percentage still may be small, but perhaps the amount of people that would still need a hospital bed would still overwhelm the system. So maybe that's why they're not doing it. I don't know. Denmark's trying that. The UK tried a version of that early on and now seems to be going towards the model of the United States. So we'll see how this plays out. One of the other pieces in the Wall Street Journal, written by Holman Jenkins, he said some pretty good things. He said, a silver lining will be fewer colds and flu victims overall because of all the measures we're taking, including distancing from each other because of the COVID-19. So the 30,000 flu deaths probably will be much lower because of all the things we're doing. So that's good news. He went on to say some of the respiratory deaths will be avoided, but we'll be spending a lot more time than we've ever been willing to spend before to avoid the flu deaths away from others. So that's something to consider. Will people put up with it once they realize that they're expected to get the virus anyways? Wouldn't it make it more sense to pour your resources into isolating those that are vulnerable rather than isolating everyone? That's kind of what I mentioned earlier. I had that idea early on, and I don't know, again, if that would be workable, but that would seem to be, at least on the surface, the best situation. Italy, though, is trying to emerge from it, he says, with everyone having had their chance to get sick, the country being able to get back to work. Now, what's interesting about Italy, if all the countries end up still having that high of rate of death of their senior citizens and their medically challenged people, and it didn't really stop that, and Italy gets through this faster, Italy's going to be able to charge forward faster than anybody else. It's kind of risky. We'll see what happens. It's kind of a crazy experiment. I'm not saying that the officials of Italy tried to do an experiment, but it will be interesting to see what happens. I think we should keep the travel ban on China until China stops the wet markets. The wet markets are those markets that sell exotic animals like bats and other critters to eat to enhance certain medical conditions of the people who eat these particular animals. It's really gross. It's what brought SARS into the world, that virus, deadly virus. It's what brought the swine flu in, that deadly flu, and it's what brought the COVID-19 into the world. So someone said this is a perfect storm, and it's really, really not. Why isn't? I'll just give you one reason. There's probably some other reasons too. When I heard the person on the TV say, oh, this is a perfect storm, this is going to be a nightmare. Not that it's not going to be very difficult and perhaps could be described someday as a nightmare, I don't know. But it's not the perfect storm. The perfect storm for the United States would be this hits us in October when it starts getting cold. And then the really cold months in November and January, it's at its peak. That's the perfect storm. But it's starting to hit us in the middle of March. And we're getting near spring. And viruses, and they think the same with this COVID-19, they're not 100% sure yet. But most of the professionals are, assuming it's going to be the case. When the weather gets warmer, there's going to be a much less transmission. The virus is going to die easier and not spread as fast. So we're going to be kind of in the clear when it gets warmer. Humidity also helps. Like this past week, it's rained almost every day here in Granbury, Texas. We're just south of Dallas-Fort Worth. And I thought that was great because I knew the humidity, especially since it's warm, it makes it less likely you're going to get the virus. You still may, but it's less likely. The reason is if someone sneezes in an environment that's more humid versus if it's really, really cold and dry and you have the heater on, which is drying out your home even more. When someone sneezes or coughs and the virus droplets that are microscopic are in the air and they hover in the air and you don't see them, they're more likely to be diluted by the humid air than if it's a dry air. So it dilutes it greatly. And that's one reason they speculate that humid weather brings better conditions of not getting the virus, not having the virus spread, as well as warmer conditions. Okay? So I'm going to give you the protocol again. Then I'll give you a little bit more spiritual advice as a pastor. I've been a certified nutritionist for over 30 years. Like I said, I keep up on all the journals. I read and read and read and read. I've been a speed reader for many, many years, and I've used that to help understand nutritional science for over 3 decades. Basic protocol: if I feel I'm catching the flu, or if I've been exposed to somebody with the flu or a cold virus, hopefully, and it seems like logically it may also help this coronavirus, COVID-19. Okay? What I do is, and again, you need to see your doctor first. If you get tested to see if you have the COVID-19, and then do what the doctor says. But if I'm around somebody who is sick with the flu or a cold, what I do, or if I feel symptoms coming upon me, what I do first is I take astrologus, 3 capsules. I take 3 to 4 tablets of selenium, 200 micrograms. I take 2 beta-glucans from Now. I suck on a zinc lozenge, and I take about 6 to 8 elderberry capsules. And I take the elderberry 6 to 8 capsules. It's just a berry, so when you think 6 to 8 capsules, you think, well, that's a lot. In a sense it is, but it's a berry. 6 to 8 whole berry capsules of elderberry. 6 to 8 about every hour or so for the first 4 or 5 hours. Then I start backing off to 3 or 4 every 3 or 4 hours, and I see have an effect. One biochemist, nutritional biochemist, told me this in a kind of a brute way of explaining how elderberry works. The Israeli scientist explained this to him. Is the virus is floating around, and the elderberry is floating around in your bloodstream after you take it. And the elderberries are like little balls, he says. Let's just, for a brute way of explaining it, make them little balls. They're just floating around. In the presence of the virus, they open up spikes, boom, and kill the virus. And that's why you need to take a lot soon when you're exposed to the flu or cold virus or possibly the COVID-19, but talk to your doctor first. Talk to your certified nutritionist first. The spikes open up and kill the virus. It looks really, really effective. So, elderberry, beta-glucans, vitamin D, zinc lozenge, astrologus, selenium. Again, I would not tell anybody to take that without talking to a professional. Make sure you talk to somebody who's a professional. They need to know your background, what medications you're taking, what history you have medically, what you've been exposed to, how you eat, how you exercise, what other supplements you're taking, and a dozen other things that come into play. So don't self-medicate. Garlic, possibly, but then again, that's a blood thinner too. Elderberry by itself, possibly, because it's just a berry, but still, it has antiviral effects. What if they're giving you an antiviral drug? How does it interact with the antiviral drug if you catch the COVID-19? You don't know. So don't self-medicate. Now, what you can do, though, is not worry. Why? Because the verse I started the program with, what Peter said, had lots of reason in the natural to worry, but he didn't. He said this: cast all your anxiety, all your worries, all your cares upon Jesus, for he cares for you. 1 Peter 5:7. Isaiah 41:10. Do not fear, I'm with you. Do not be dismayed, I'm your God. I will strengthen you, and I will help you, and I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. And Jesus said, don't worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Live each day to glorify God and enjoy him. Don't live each day for fear. My best guess, and I could be wrong, is that this thing will start blowing over in about 2 weeks, and things will ease up. My worst case guess is 2 months, maybe the middle of May. I don't want to stay home all this time. It's so hard. I understand that. Start studying the Word. Become a Bible scholar for the couple months, okay? Get in the Hebrew, get in the Greek. You can go to Cross and Crown Radio. We have shows on UFOs and the Bible. Cross and Crown Radio on YouTube. We have shows on near-death experiences. We have shows on science and the Bible. And we have unique perspectives on most of them. We have shows on the last words of famous people as well as Christian martyrs. We have shows on the proof for God, the logical proof for God, the practical proof for God, the evidential proof for God. We have all these videos, hundreds and hundreds of them on a tremendous amount of subjects. They can keep you entertained probably for a few months, okay? And there's a whole bunch of other stuff on YouTube, as you know. But Cross and Crown Radio, you can go there. We could use your help if you can give to our Patreon page. You can see the link there here on Facebook. There's a link, as well as when this gets posted on YouTube tomorrow. The Bible says in Psalm 94, when anxiety was great within me, your consolation, God, brought me joy. Your consolation gave me joy. Do not let your hearts be troubled, Jesus said. You believe in God, believe also in me. That means to trust Jesus. Trust him. He died for you. He was buried. He rose again. He's still there praying for you and I, all of his sheep. And he sent the Holy Spirit to dwell in our hearts. So you should have joy and peace. You don't have to be worried. Psalm 38:9 says, all my longings lie open before you, Lord. My sign is not hidden from you. God sees you. God is with you. He knows. Jesus said, peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. I do not give as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Do not be afraid. And then I like this one in Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verse 10. So then, banish anxiety from your heart and cast off troubles of your body, for youth and vigor are meaningless. So don't worry about all the health issues and stuff. They're meaningless. Banish those worries. Banish those anxieties. And get yourself, even when this passes, get yourself something like I do. A little box that has ready for you or anybody in your household all those herbs I talked about after you talk to a doctor or a health professional that you can take: selenium, astragalus, garlic capsules, zinc lozenges, selenium, elderberry, astragalus, olive oil capsules, and beta-glucans. I have it ready for whenever I catch a flu or a cold or I'm exposed to one. I would encourage all you guys and gals doing the same thing. But don't worry about this. There's going to be new data, new facts that come forth every day about this virus. One thing we know is God's in control. Is this the end times? I highly doubt it. If you're a pre-mill, and no matter what your version of the tribulation is, if it's an aspect of the tribulation, would only elderly and people with medical frailties be dying? It would seem to be, if this is part of the end times thing, that everybody would be dying, young and old and so forth, like the Spanish flu. A lot of people don't know this. The Spanish flu of 1918 killed younger people much faster and more often than older people. I don't even know if they ever figured out why. Could be something to do with hormones. They don't know. But keep that in mind. This is not a world-ending situation by any stretch. Stock up on food and water you can without being greedy, without being one who's just hoarding everything for yourself. Get some of these herbs. Pretty much every one that I mentioned is available on Amazon as of tonight. And I don't know about in your stores, probably not. Health food stores, probably not the best place to buy sometimes, only because some of the products sit on the shelf for a long time and they almost never throw them away. How do I know that? I worked in a health food store and had to fight to get some products removed, even that were dated. They want to put the sticker over them. And so you have to understand that health food owners, some of these products are a little bit, I wouldn't call them exotic, but not on the main lane. area of selling, so you might get an old product. Old product won't have the potency that you need, probably. So get them from Amazon. If you go to a health food store, keep your 6 feet distance. Make sure you understand if you touched anything. Assume the virus is on your fingers now and you have to wash your hands. And look at the dates of the product. Some of the products have dates and you can possibly buy from a health food store. But if you are out there and you're really, really scared about what's happening with this virus and you don't know Jesus, this is your opportunity. You heard earlier that Jesus died on the cross for our sins, was buried, and God raised him from the dead. If God has touched your heart, if his grace has touched your heart with that word, and you feel, man, I really, really want Jesus in my life. I need Jesus today. This is, my sin I want to turn from. I want to live for God. If God has been putting that on your heart right now, turn from your ways and profess to your Father, your Heavenly Father. Say, I believe in Jesus. I believe he died on the cross for my sins and was buried, and I believe God raised him from the dead. I believe Jesus is the Son of God and the Son of Man. I give him my whole heart. I turn from my ways, and I will follow him all the days of my life. If that's you, get a Bible. You can write us. We'll send you a physical Bible if you want one, but you can get one right on your smartphone and on your computer immediately. Get one. And once church is open again, get involved in a good church. You can see our church this Sunday morning at 11 a.m. We will be broadcasting on Facebook at 11 a.m. We'll just have a few of the leaders there, but we won't have a normal church service. So this is Pastor Mike Robinson. Until next time, say, may God richly bless you.